JayaShri, JayaShri, JayaShri. I thought about talking about spiritual degeneration. So there's something called spiritual degeneration, and that is applied for those people who are on the path of awakening, people who are trying their best to live a spiritually aligned life, people who are keen on deliberate, intentional spiritual practice. So, this group of people who are on the path of awakening, who are seeking enlightenment, who are living a deliberate, intentional spiritual life, one time or the other, at a particular time in this journey, they will experience this thing we call spiritual degeneration. So how do I know it? Well, I've gone through that. I know what it feels like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what its taste and smell, as in the whole experience, right? So whatever we talk about, our experiences, it's just like going on a journey somewhere, physical journey, and people who go before you, prior to you on the same path, experience things on the way, and perhaps they will make a recordings of their experiences on the way, so that whoever follows their path, the same trail, same journey, will find it useful. So that's how we talk about these things, right? We cannot talk about things that we haven't experienced. So spiritual degeneration, it's not easy. It's a very, very painful time period. In a previous video, I was talking about two phases on the path of enlightenment. If you like to put two phases, like different phases into this journey, there are essentially two phases. One is the phase where you are seeking the truth, you are separate from the truth, you are collecting, accumulating knowledge, and there's no conviction fully, and you are still trying to understand things. It's just like a caterpillar, keep on eating. The second phase is you become the truth. It's not separate. It is not a separate knowledge. It's an integrated experience. It's a real thing. Some choose to speak about it, some choose not to. It depends on the its personal experience, and some have the capacity and the desire to express it. It naturally happens. They're not desiring egoistically or trying to do anything. Just like a flower is blooming, a flower blooms, right? Flower is making a statement by blooming. So human beings also, when they've gone through this awakening process, for some people this expression happens naturally, for some it doesn't. The ones who express are the ones who will leave a trail behind. For the ones who are following them, can hopefully make use of whatever they have expressed in their own journey. After all, we all go through actually the same experience, but since we have different brains, we are wired differently, we experience the same thing completely differently, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. When you go on this journey, you realize that finally it's the same thing, right? Just the vehicles are different. The modes of traveling were just different approaches, that's all. Yeah, and after all, it's perhaps all about the use of language, nothing but that. And So talking about, so those are the two phases of the awakening path according to me. And first you are unconscious, and then you are conscious. Initially you are part of life, like you're really associated with life. Second path, you are not associated with life, but you are playing full on because you know you are free. Initially there is a person, separate person, entity seeking something, and the second phase, seeker seeking what is sought is the same. There's no separate seeking or a person seeking something. First phase is very effortful, second phase is just effortless. And the first phase you have lots of limitations in terms of extreme goods and bads, right and wrong. You are being pulled apart by the polarity, the duality of life. Second phase, you're pretty much home with both. It doesn't mean there's no good and bad. It's not what we mean. That it doesn't mean we are not saying there's right or wrong or light. There's no light or darkness. It is just that you're home with the two extremes. You have evolved beyond that. You have transcended the duality, and you are witnessing. You're just the witness. You are the pure awareness of everything. You're simply observing things. You're the witness, and everything is happening through you, and it doesn't really matter. At the beginning, during the first phase, if something so-called bad happens, or you do something so bad or evil, it matters, and you try to stop. You try hard. Second phase, it's not about trying to fix anything, but you are experiencing both sides of life through you without any condemnation. This is a personal experience because others cannot define or judge what you are going through. And after all, spiritual enlightenment, awakening is a personal thing. We can only talk about it, but we are definitely not able to judge someone else's progress unless it's a teacher to whom you have dedicated your life, and you have a deep sense of rapport and alignment with the teacher, and the teacher can see through things and perhaps with love guide you in the path. But otherwise, no one can really make judgments about your spiritual awakening experience because it's very personal. Only you can come into conclusions about that if you don't have a teacher. And anyway, finally you become your own teacher. So that having said that, let me talk about spiritual degeneration. Spiritual degeneration is a very painful experience. Those who are going on the path of awakening face during the first phase. As I mentioned to you, there are two phases. The first phase, this is one so-called state of mind that you come into during the first phase. And perhaps it is also an indication that you're getting really closer to the truth, the so-called, not the subjective truth that's being said by others, which is in the books, but the pure truth, which is to be experienced by you. If you like to call it the Tao, it's the real Tao, but that cannot be expressed, you know. So what happens during this spiritual degeneration is that you feel hopeless. You feel a sense of directionless. You feel there's no meaning to the whole existence and life. You can't call it full of negativities as well, but it's mostly an empty state. Initial part of the spiritual path, it's more like venturing into a nice forest. It feels nice. People, when they get into this meditation, chanting, all the spiritual practices, even things like, say, yoga, qigong, and let's say different healing techniques, etc., right? Rituals, right? Chantings, etc. So initially, when you go into the path, it feels nice. It really feels nice, like actually going into a nice forest and beautiful flowers, animals, birds, lovely green, all high feeling. And you keep going, and then you come to a thick, dense forest. But of course, by the time you have practiced things and practice gone into the forest, you have developed some skills and capabilities, and you have some self-knowledge, knowledge about the forest. So you venture into the thick forest, and maybe there's fear, maybe there's not, but fear is inevitable in the path of spirituality, because you kind of, the ego sense of self is losing its power. It's a very scary place. Many things can happen when you're in the thick forest. A lot of adversities, adventure, but a lot of challenges, fearful experiences. It's not going to be easy, but you have the capacity. And now, when it comes to the spiritual degeneration part of it, suddenly something unexpected happens. Suddenly. This happens very suddenly. Really suddenly, right? It's like, you have seen some wonderful people in your lives. Let's say they're wonderful, they're really cool, they are extroverted. You really find that they are doing their life well, and suddenly here you hear about them that they have gone into depression, right? They are in seclusion, they are in isolation. You don't even know what happened to your friend, like you can't come into terms with it, and you might even try to rush them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or get some help. Whereas the friend is actually going through an interesting spiritual experience. Now, something like that in the path of spirituality, when you have passed through this thick, dense forest and you have experienced loads of excitements, lots of adventure, lots of confidence. Actually, one place where you can figure this out is that when you're closer to this spiritual degeneration part, just before that, there's so much of confidence, there's so much of self-confidence, so much of conviction, to a place where you really feel like you have hit the gold, hit the treasure. You really feel you have come to the truth, you really feel you have realized it all. But somewhere deep inside there's this little doubt, and then comes suddenly, from this thick forest appears a sandy, dry desert. A desert where you actually cannot figure out any direction. It's no water, and even if you see from distance some water, like a lovely oasis, and you start walking towards that, suddenly you find it's disappeared, because it was only an illusion. Right? You have heard about stories about how it happens, or what it happens in a desert. And in case if you have traveled in a desert, you know the experience, right? So it is a desert-like state. It's partly psychologically extreme disappointment after desperation, and beyond sadness, beyond any dissatisfaction, right? It is a state where it's like a deep sense of depression. It's very hard, actually, but very interestingly, the body is anyway going through the journey. Body is like going through the motions of life. Physically, people are functional. So just because someone is going through depression, that doesn't mean they are having a spiritual experience. Please understand that. Okay, not everyone who's, of course, for every psychological issue, there is a spiritual aspect. I am here to say that, which is a different discussion. But just because someone is experiencing depression, that doesn't mean it is part of their spiritual journey. It has a spiritual dimension. So this desert-like or spiritual degeneration phase, it's like depression, but the thing is, in depression, people maybe come to a place where they become physically dysfunctional, where they can't pull themselves out of the chair or morning from the bed and get to work, etc. When it comes to spiritual degeneration, you are fully functional. Like, your body is actually going through all the motions of life. You will eat, you will do the job, you will make love, or you do the business, cook, clean, eat. I mean, you will look as if you're living your normal life. For the outside people, unless someone is extremely sensitive towards you, like your soul partner, your teacher, your spiritual teacher, the guide, coach, mentor, guru, no one will really understand what's going on. Partly, let's say, if you have been a very spiritual person and you have lived a very confident, comfortable, very balanced life, people in your life, especially so-called loved ones, might not even understand ever, even if you say to them that you have gone through something like this, because you have been a very confident person, you're positive naturally, generally, you are inclined to be very spiritual, so the expectations about you is very high. They would not even know that you are going through some kind of soul degenerating process inside. And even if your life is kind of slowing down, they will consider it as part of your spiritual work and would not even understand. But only a teacher will understand this journey. A teacher can look into your eyes and see your soul, see your heart, see your life force energy, feel your pulse without touching you, and will know that you're in this space. So all what the teacher does is, they will hold space for you. When you say hold space, you might not, when you're going through spiritual degeneration, one of the interesting signs is that you start doubting your own teacher, your own practice, your own spiritual, let's say, the philosophy and perspectives, and let's say the very Dhamma that you have ever known and you have been practicing. You start questioning all of it to a level, it's more than just questioning. Actually, it's not inquiring intellectually. It's like, what's the purpose, what's the meaning? Because it feels like you haven't got what you wanted from all that. That's it. That's why I said it's like extreme disappointment. You feel like you have done so much, but it's not even a sign that I have come to the elixir of life. I have come to taste the elixir of life. So it's a very desperate situation also. And the thing is, one thing, you start really questioning the teacher or the teachings, and you will try to actually stay away from the teacher. Not out of anger. You may experience anger and animosity. You may, I'm not saying no. But it's more like, I don't know what to do with you anymore, or I don't know what to do with your teachings anymore. I want to love you, I want to respect you, I want to understand it more, I want to have what you're having, but I don't know how. I don't know if it is for me. Like, so much of unworthiness, undeservedness, so much of doubt actually, and anxiety takes over. And also, in terms of your heart, like heart emotions, it will be a phase where you are mostly like dry in terms of love and compassion and kindness. Your heart is not lit up. It's like a flower withering, and it really kills the soul, right? It's a very painful place. The heart is actually literally like empty. It could be a place where, let's say for an example, if someone is experiencing some anger and kind of frustration, perhaps it's a good thing because they're having some emotions, and the moment you experience a negative emotion, you're bound to experience some love and compassion, right? That's how the energy goes from one extreme to the other. But this could be a scenario where you're not experiencing any of those emotions, not even some kind of anger, because anger is adrenaline, right? And norepinephrine, and thereafter after a little bit of dopamine, as in people who get angry and have a bit of adrenaline rush are the people who are working towards something, meaning the dopamine rush, as in the hormone that drives you to achieve something. This is not going to happen during this phase. So it's more like a really empty state. That's why I kind of, the closest psychological state you can relate to this as depression, but it is not really depression. That's the point. You are functional, and see, mind being empty is a good thing. It's really good, right? When your mind is empty, it's free, right? You're happy. I mean, natural happiness comes out. But this is the emptiness, as in, like, emptiness is in a bad way. It's not that your mind content is empty and you feel free. It's like you feel meaningless and life is empty, whereas life is not empty. So during this phase, life is not affirmative. Like, at least during the phase where you are in the thick forest-like experience in the spiritual journey, even if there are like wild beasts and animals and a lot of challenging experiences, it creates some motivation and drive to make things happen. It helps you to overcome fear. In the face of desert-like state, in this degenerative process, you're not sure about anything, including yourself, right? So it's actually a very scary place. It's a very painful place. It's extremely, I wish no one should enter that place, but I think people are going through that phase. Those genuine seekers, genuine, authentic truth seekers. Yeah. So what can you do during this phase? Because one thing that happens is one of the first signs is that you start sort of staying away from your teacher, teachings, practice. You feel like not doing it. You feel like not meeting your teacher, connecting with your teacher. Just kind of repulsed feeling. And so you don't even seek for advice and guidance. So it can be very challenging to even figure out what to do, because you don't want to do anything either, right? It feels like the truth, but it's not the truth, right? So it's not having that nice, it doesn't give you that nice sense of completion or satisfaction. So that way it's not the truth, because in truth you feel happy and joyful and it's amazing satisfaction. So what can you do, right? Like, because see, we invite people to talk to us if they're going through this, but people don't want to even talk about it. It's hard to even have a conversation about it, because in their mind, they go through this rant. What's the point? It's another thing, right? So much of doubt. So hopefully this kind of video can help these individuals at least to become aware if this is happening. It's only a phase in their spirituality, and not to worry about it. And these tips can be very useful. First thing, because you are biologically functioning fully and you actually get your things done during the day, one thing that I can give from my personal experiences is to provide a lot of nourishment to the body. Really provide lots of good, real nutrients, real foods, good, nourishing, really wholesome foods, vitamins, high quality water, fruits and vegetables, basically real foods, meaning not processed foods, a lot of proteins, vitamins, fiber, right? Like, just get yourself to feed yourself very well. Please do that. With whatever the budget you may have, come up with a weekly food plan and feed yourself very well. This is the first advice I gave you. I'm not going to use much time to explain too much of the science behind it, but all in all, during the spiritual path, right, in the spiritual journey, we go out of balance in different elements of life, existential elements. Let's say in Qigong or traditional Chinese medicine, we talk about 5 elements, right? The water element, the fire element, the earth element, the metal element, and then the wood element, right? Wood. So usually these elements go out of sync, right? Now in Ayurveda we talk about Vapit Sem, yeah, and the three doshas in Ayurveda. So similarly, there are like four bhutas, or four main forces of life, like the fire element, the heat, the airy or spaciousness, and the thick solid nature, and then you have the watery, the flowing quality, things like that. So there are different categorization as to how the things in existence is made up of elemental qualities, right? So let's say when one of these elements is out of sync, people really go into extreme mental and emotional states that they can't even explain. So one thing that happened to people on the spiritual path, they may tend to live an imbalanced life for a longer time, that they ignore their body. I've seen this happening for people on this path of spirituality, like they'll perhaps give too much and receive less. Give too much, receive less, even in terms of food and nutrients, right? Rest, etc. So first thing, please give yourself good nutrition. Second thing, now that you know, and when you know you can do better, is that this is only a phase. Let me tell you that. Leave everything aside from this video. Take this. It's just a phase. Have patience with yourself. Have patience with your life. And yes, just go through the motions. Just daily stuff. Just get things done. Live the normal life. Don't expect too much. Take it easy. Totally take it easy, because it's only a phase. It's only a phase. It's only a phase. So you also can borrow that affirmation from me when you're being really hit by this experience. You just can silently affirm, it's only a phase. It's only a phase. It's only a phase. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. I'm well. I'm well. I know it's okay. I know I'm okay. I'm okay. It's only a phase. It's only a phase. It's only a phase. So just feed into your subconscious mind that it's just a phase, and things will be okay. And the next thing you can do is actually, if and only if you have a close friend, like truly dear friend, who understands you, who understood you, who you feel close to your heart, just make them aware about this experience. But only if you have someone really, we call it bosom friends, right? Just inform them that you're having a little troubling times, and not to expect too much from you, and just to be there if you need. This is the third thing, right? Just to talk, go out somewhere, etc. And the next thing I like to suggest you is to spend whole lot of time in nature, in the beach, in the trees, near the trees, as in the like outside in the forest or in the gardens. A lot of green, seeing the sky, clouds, air, a lot of fresh air, with animals and birds. Maybe you might not feel too attracted to animals as well. It could be for any living thing, but mostly inanimate objects like things in nature, the rocks, the rivers. You spend every day, pretty much every day, make sure you go out, get some fresh air, see the sunshine, bright sun in your eyes, see a lot of green, see a lot of greens, right? As much as you eat a lot of greens, see a lot of greens, touch the trees, touch the earth. If you have the facilities, and if you have the garden and few utensils, do some gardening. Plant at least one plant every week or so. Fruit plant, flower plants, or vegetables, whatever. Like, so do some gardening where you touch the soil, etc. And the biggest advice: stop trying to do any spiritual work. I mean it. No meditation, trying to meditate, trying to put affirmations, like do affirmations, trying to do chantings, trying to do yoga, trying to do qigong, trying to do pranic healings, to reiki, to whatever those energy healing practices or spiritual practices. So I mean, don't force yourself to do it. You rather not do things. If you don't feel like, don't do it. Especially during this phase. It's a phase you just take care of yourself. You just take care of yourself physically. And it's all about actually nurturing. Even spending time in nature, it's about really taking care of your physical body. See, in the morning sunlight, evening sunlight, make sure you get every day a dose of sunlight, the vitamins. That's it. All right. So I suggest you consider these tips and help yourself. I send you a lot of blessings. JayaShri.